One morning I woke up and I knew it all.
Finally, John Gray makes his debut in a Colorado Rockies uniform at 20th and Blake, nonetheless. An awesome day. Probably the only day that was left that we were going to look forward to the rest of the season. We found out right after we did the podcast last week that he was going to be called up. He pitched Tuesday night. I was there. Can't believe you guys, as Rockies fans, did not go because, that was an important moment. A lot of bloggers went. We had the blogger picture on the internet. Hashtag blog the internet instead of break. Yeah, you see what I did there?
Yeah.
Anyways, we'll get into that. Welcome into Rocky Singery, episode 14, RCSNY, Ritz Cook Spillborghs, Neagle and Young. I say Spilborghs because we'll have Ryan Spilborghs later on the podcast. How awesome is that? And you can follow us on Twitter at Rocky Singer. You can follow us on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and Podbean, as well as on our website, RockyZingers.com, ESPN Sweet Spot Blog Network member. 14th edition, some fantastic 14s in baseball history. Hands down my favorite, Ernie Banks.
I mean, you can't go wrong with Mr. Cub himself.
He was Troy Tulowitzki before Troy Tulowitzki was Troy Tulowitzki. But
Troy doesn't play for us anymore.
Shut up. But paving the way for Ernie Banks, another 14, Larry Doby, first American League African-American, played for the Indians, I think starting in 1948. Fantastic player, obviously in the Hall of Fame. Pete Rose, another number 14.
King.
He's pretty good. Gil Hodges, Jim Bunning, Julio Franco, Paul Konerko, Andres Galarraga, Rocky, Jim Rice, Vida Blue, one of the best pitchers over the first 3 years of his career ever. Mark Ellis is actually high up on this list, which is funny. He's actually above David Bryce. So a lot of great 14s in baseball history. Anyways, let's get into it. John Gray makes his debut Tuesday at Coors Field, like I said, against the Mariners and Johnny Allstaff, whoever was pitching for the Mariners that day. I think it was Vlado Nunez or something. Nuno.
Or Vidal Nuno.
Or whatever,
yeah.
American League. Am I right or am I right? Because it's a joke. The American League is a joke, so I was following the joke with the am I right. Anyways, Gray's debut. How you guys? First off, Marco Mamelin to my far right, Trevor McKinney to my right. How do you guys feel about John Gray's debut?
I was impressed. I mean, a lot of people. You look at the final stat line, and he went only 4 innings, only threw 77 pitches. It wasn't shocking by any standards from stat line. But when you watched him, his fastball was on point. There was a lot of movement behind it. That was the thing I was most impressed with was his fastball and his composure. He just seemed to be unfaltered and unflattered, or just he really didn't let the fact that he had a rough first inning get to him, and then he continued on. And I think he could have actually come out for a 5th inning, and if not won the game, if the Rockies would have decided not to pinch hit for him.
Yeah, I'm moving into a new apartment, so I don't have any internet or TV, so I didn't see it. But I did check out the stat line and checked out Twitter to see what everyone else was saying. And, I mean, from what I understood, he looked good. He's still young. He's got some time to develop. So I think that it can only go up. That's my viewpoint.
It could have been worse. That sounds kind of negative to say, but it really could have been worse the way he was pitching in the first inning. He was leaving his fastball very high in the zone. He threw a changeup. I believe that was a 55-foot changeup, and I think Drew Kreisman told me this. He was just like, I'm going to throw a changeup into the dirt because I literally just need to throw a ball into the dirt to see that I can throw a ball down. So his first inning was erratic, as to be expected in your big league debut, especially from a guy who throws 98. That ball can go all over the place. But in the second inning, I saw him top out at 97 on the Coors Field board. His fastball, exceptional movement out from center field where I was sitting. His slider, his ability to hit the corners with his slider was really, really good. One of his earned runs was a Jose Reyes error that turned into a run. So that should not have been, there's just things like that when you're a pitcher, nonetheless a Rockies pitcher, that, crap's going to happen to you and your ERA is going to be a little bit inflated. But overall, I thought I was really impressed. And, that was the first time I had seen him pitch in person. I've seen him pitch down in Albuquerque on the camera a lot on TV. But, the thing that was most impressive to me was how smooth he looks. And I was talking to Mark Stout about this. Just, he looks so smooth. Ubaldo Jimenez had that same similar motion to him where he'd tuck his arm behind his back. And, but Ubaldo would kind of get it tangled and come out kind of slingshotty. And there was a lot of pressure on his arm. Whereas Gray, he comes out and it looks so loose. And that's why he's able to throw about 5-6 miles an hour faster than Ubaldo can. There's something different watching him than even with Jorge De La Rosa for that matter, or especially compared to like a guy like Chris Frosten or Kyle Kendrick, he just looks like a pitcher. He doesn't look like a thrower. He looks like he should be there. He looks like he was born to pitch. There's something different with John Gray. Will his talent turn into, a great pitcher? Who knows? We can't judge that yet, but I was very encouraged by his first start, and he goes again on Monday, which is tomorrow, against New York.
Yeah, to finish up on that, I also thought he just looked like a legit pitcher that maybe will live up to the hype that we put behind him. I'm not trying to put any unfair pressure on him, but he really did. He pitched kind of like what you want to see from your ace pitcher in your minor league system. So I thought it was good. I think we'll have a lot more positive things to say about him in weeks to come.
Say we will have many great things to say about him. All right. Let's recap the week. Besides that, we're gonna get into John Gray plenty on this podcast the next few weeks because it's really one of the only things to talk about. He only pitched once. Everyone talked about it. We'll talk about it later. Let's talk about other things. We got some really good stuff this week.
We have Ryan Spilborghs.
Right, from Root Sports joining us, former Rocky.
Namesake.
Right. Many of you know that he's one of the reasons why I'm actually a Rockies fan. Ryan actually knows that story. It's pretty cool that I got to tell Ryan the story of why I'm a Rockies fan and why he's a part of it. But recapping the week, we went the Rockies, not we. The Rockies went 3-3. Interesting that we won a series in Washington against one of the better teams in the National League, especially when they're throwing out Scherzer and Strasburg. I think they threw out Zimmerman, too, at us.
Yeah.
And then we had Seattle here for Gray's debut. Eddie Butler also pitched in that series. I think so did Jorge De La Rosa.
I think he might have
Russin.
De La Rosa pitched versus Zimmerman.
It was like Russin. Who knows? At this point, they went 1-2 against Seattle here. The Rockies continuing to do better on the road than they're doing at home, which is really mind blowing. But the big storylines from the week are probably the biggest storyline from the week is probably Carlos Gonzalez.
Yeah, he's on fire. If you guys have been watching the games, you've just seen that not only is he hitting home runs, he's hitting them with power. I guess you can only hit a home run with power, but they're going second deck.
It's not, like 390 feet or whatever. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and he's like we noticed in this national series specifically, he's just coming up with clutch home runs also. Like right in the end of the game, or actually it was about the 6th inning of the first game in Washington. He hit a grand slam. We were down by 3 runs. It put us up. We ended up winning the game. That's really clutch. And then today he hits 2 home runs for us, and both of them ended up just inching us closer to. Well, first one gave us the lead, and the other one gave us. I believe tied the game, or if not, it got us closer when it seemed like the team may end up giving up. So I don't know. He's been putting some huge games together recently.
Yeah, 3 home runs this series, 4 home runs this week. Since June 1st, Carlos Gonzalez has the most home runs in the National League. Nolan Arenado is the second most.
Yeah.
Right. He's now up to 123 weighted runs created plus on the season, as well as over a 2 WAR. He's hitting 281, 338 on base, 543 slug, which if you knew this guy's stats in April, I don't think you could have ever predicted him to be over 260, let alone 280. So really I know you can't do it, but if you take out April from Carlos Gonzalez's season or the first 5.5 weeks, Cargo has been Cargo. And I said it at the start of the season about Cargo and Tulo. I didn't think either of the guys were healthy, and you really saw a healthier Tulo the last 6 weeks or so. Cargo is a completely different player right now than what we've been used to the last 2 years when we've seen him injured. I think a big thing is putting him back in right field. That's probably helping his mentality as well as his legs, because Coors Field left field is ridiculous. And I'm also glad to see the Rockies not put Cargo back in left field with Dickerson's injury. They could have easily put Cargo back in left field where he's won a Gold Glove. Not that he's not won a Gold Glove in right field, but Cargo's been playing left field more the last few years than he had been right field. So I like them keeping him in right field while letting Drew Stubbs or Brandon Barnes or Kyle Parker play left. Two guys who arguably might be more athletic at this stage in their career than Cargo, or are using it, are more inclined to use their energy in the outfield and not just with their bats.
Just more logical.
Right.
Why waste the Cargo's precious time and body?
So not everything Walt Weiss does is stupid.
Well, I guess you brought up Kyle Parker playing in the outfield. I think we could transition into just talking about the fact that he finally got freed from the minor leagues. It was good to see. He not only came up with his first big league home run in his second big league game, but he also came up with a huge catch that was it was game altering, I believe, in his third game. So he's playing both sides of the ball pretty well.
It's crazy because when Kyle Parker hit that home run, I'm standing with Tyler Maughan, who led the Free Kyle Parker campaign, Drew Creasman, who was like number 2 on that boat, Lodo Magic Man Will, and like 3 or 4 other bloggers that were all over this Kyle Parker train. So Kyle Parker hits this home run, and there's just F-bombs, like, hell yeah, whatever going on right there. The Coors Field ushers were not exceptionally happy. They told us this was a family environment, to which we replied, sure. Another guy that I've been really high on this year, who's been impressive, you guys have known I've been very high on Christian Friedrich / Tommy Kahnle. Christian Friedrich did not have the best of weeks. Tommy Kahnle, however, got his first 2 big league saves.
The first of which came on his 26th birthday, which was just an added little boost to him. He was really excited when he got that save. You could see it.
Yeah, but another young guy that is the opposite of what Kahnle's week, Eddie Butler, really rough week. Another one of those. 7 earned runs, 4 innings pitched in one of his games with 1 walk, and then he had 6 innings pitched, 4 earned runs with 4 walks. He does not look good. Even yesterday, I watched the game with Creasman, and he was like, some of these aren't all Eddie Butler's fault. Yeah, no doubt. It's not all Eddie Butler's fault, whatever, but it's consistently bad from Eddie Butler. You can't just all blame it on the supporting cast. Yes, Eddie Butler's got historically low run support. And yes, Eddie Butler has the worst BABIP luck ever. But on the same sense, if it keeps happening, it's not just bad BABIP luck and bad run support. There's got to be some of it falling on Eddie Butler. And I'm just kind of sick of seeing Eddie go out and struggle. It's really been disappointing.
So with that, would you like to see him maybe demoted, or what do you think they should do with him?
I've been saying they should change him into a reliever now for weeks, but I want them to hold off on that at least probably until halfway through next year, even. Just because I think he deserves a legitimate chance as a starter. And really, what are you going to do if you're not starting Eddie Butler at this point? Are you going to bring back up John Lannon? What are you going to do? You might as well give Eddie Butler a fair chance. But good news from this week is how clutch the Rockies have been.
Well, yeah, I already mentioned with the Carlos Gonzalez home runs he's been hitting, but it's also worth mentioning that Mike McHenry hit a walk-off to end that Seattle series and allow us to not get swept by Seattle. And then today, DJ LeMahieu actually hit a two-out single that scored 2 runs that inevitably actually gave us the win today. So, I don't know, and obviously the Carlos Gonzalez clutch home runs and hits he's been giving. So, even though the Rockies are 3-3 this past week, the 3 games that they've won have been won with clutch hits and hits that have come really late, when normally the Rockies would kind of fold under the pressure.
Yeah, you go 3-3, and you're the team where the team is right now. and you're playing 500 ball, just week in and week out, 3-3, I think that's a success. So
Against a good team like the Nationals.
Yeah, and Seattle's not a bad team either. They're not. It's
their
not like
record's a lot worse than their actual ability. Like they're a team with Felix Hernandez, Nelson Cruz, Robinson Cano. I mean, the list goes on. Taijuan Walker.
Team can score 15 runs at Coors Field.
Yeah.
Oh, they did.
They really did.
Yeah. So I really not disappointed with how the Rockies played this week. There was a lot. I think there's more positives if you look in the right places than there are negatives at this point. Because I think we should be looking at the right things. Because you look at the negatives are more with guys like Rafael Betancourt or John Axford, guys that aren't part of the long-term plan. The positives continue to keep building for guys like Charlie Blackmon, DJ LeMahieu, Carlos Gonzalez, guys that'll be around a while. Jose Reyes, not so much, but we're gonna figure that one out. That's gonna take some time. So, but speaking of the Rockies' plan and what the Rockies are going to do, we had a fantastic interview. 25 minutes. I sat down with Ryan Spilborghs in the Coors Field press box lunchroom on Monday, and we just talked for like an hour. I got half an hour of it on tape. Please listen to it because Spilly's got some great things, not only about the tulo trade and the Rockies' plan, but he talks about his own broadcasting career, what goes into making trades, the Coors Field home road splits, just a really broad conversation about everything that could possibly going through your mind right now as a Rockies fan or as someone that listens or cares or watches this team. So go and check that out. You can follow him on Twitter at SpillyGoat19. You can follow his work on Roots Sports pre and post, and he's got a little hint in there about maybe joining the broadcast crew in the near future. So listen up, and there it is right now. Joining us now on RCSNY Rocky Singery, Ritz, Cook, Spillborghs, Neagle and Young, Ryan Spilborghs from Roots Sports. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, you got it. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so happy to have you. I mean, I've told you this before, but one of the reasons I am a Rockies fan is a combination between you and Jorge De La Rosa.
You got the human rain delay, and then I run around the bases super fast to just get the game over with. So I like it.
Right.
We're good. We're yin and yang apparently.
As we just talked about, I'm a small guy. I gotta rep the guys that aren't necessarily born with the most gifts, talent wise.
Peter Gammons is like 5'3". So most of the guys that you see on like MLB Network or any of these things, like a Buster Olney, Ken Rosenthal, even Tim Kirkchin, they're all like 5'3", so you're in good company. You don't have to be tall.
That's why Jenny's got such an advantage. She gets to wear heels around.
You can too.
Right. Yeah, I guess I could.
Yeah, there's no one's telling you can't wear heels.
Right, true. Going into you were very outspoken this week about the tulo deal. You played with him. He's obviously a good buddy of yours. Have you spoke to either LaTroy Hawkins or Troy Tulowitzki since the deal took place?
Of course, yeah. I've spent a lot of time with both of them. Right after they got traded, I was in Chicago covering it as Roots Sports' on-field reporter, and obviously, maybe not obviously, but I'm very close to those two guys, and it's not, when my Roots Sports jersey is off, these are my friends. These are the guys I text. I text them after games. I'll talk to them, and with Tulo, I spent a good hour with him the day after the trade. We just sat and watched TV, drank coffee, and just kind of went over the gamut of emotions that he was going through. And I thought it was good for him. I really did. I mean, as hard as it was, and I know everyone's going to wonder what was behind all the different words and the shock and the blindsidedness and all these different things. That's between Tulo and the front office. That's none of my business. That's really none of ours, to be honest. I mean, this is the business aspect of baseball and how an organization runs it and how they acquire talent. In order for the Rockies, and you and I both know this, in order for the Rockies to even compete, you have to have starting pitching. And at some point, we knew this was going to happen. We knew one of the guys, the core group, was going to be gone. They had to, because in order to acquire that talent, you have to give something up. Tulo, to me, was one of the tougher ones to give up because of our friendship, our relationship. But I also knew you can bring back a king's ransom for a Tulowitzki. And you're hoping that the guys that you get for Tulo equate to good pitching. You're hoping Jeff Hoffman turns into a front of the line starter. Will it happen? I have no idea. That's the interest that we have. That's why it's so exciting. Is Tulo going to be a great player in Toronto? Absolutely. Is he going to be a great player the next 5 years? No doubt. There's no doubt in my mind. But at some point, this organization and Jeff Bridich and Dick Monfort and everybody that was part of it, they knew that this day would come. They knew that based on the plan that they've had in place for the last 5 years, based on the core group that they had, with the Cargo and Tulo, Nolan coming up, DJ, Charlie, you had a window to succeed with an offensive talented group. Look at the record of the last 5 years. It didn't work. It didn't work. As bad as it sounds, it didn't work. And yeah, injuries happened. All these different things happened. But at the end of the day, it didn't work.
You still had some of the most talent on offense out of anyone in baseball.
And it didn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. And I've said, and I will always say this. One of the things that the Rockies will always have is talented position players. And me being a former position player, I wouldn't say a byproduct of Coors Field, but Coors Field helped me out. It helped my career out. I mean, I'm not sitting here today if I didn't play at Coors Field. And I think I'd be naive if I said that some of my numbers and stats and whatever, if I was good in the clutch or whatever, it doesn't matter. That my numbers in my career aren't what they are unless I played at Coors Field.
So you don't think the home road splits actually hurt you? Because we've done some studies on this as a blogger community, and when guys go onto the road from Coors Field, their numbers drop significantly. And it's not just Coors Field; it's that there's probably a timing issue there.
I don't totally agree with that because I've lived it, and I think a lot of times people look outside the box and try to say, well, there's a timing, there's more movement on fastballs, or there's less movement on fastballs, so when pitchers come to Coors Field, they have to throw more fastballs. So on the road, you're seeing more off-speed. I don't agree with that. If you look at a lot of guys that have had successful numbers, and a lot of times it's been free agent hitters, right? Like
Kadai or Morneau, Hunley.
Exactly. They come here, they have no problem. There's no discrepancy.
And the Rockies will probably always be able to get guys like that.
Exactly. And what is a common denominator? Did they come from other organizations? Are they better players because they come? No, it's not that. It's just that they don't know any different. And look at my numbers, look at my stats, look at my splits for several different years. I hit 300 on the road as well. Why did I? Being a homegrown guy is because at some point, and you'll always hear me say this, is that when a lineup trusts each other, so everybody in the lineup's just trying to do what they can do, trust their confident level, trust they know what their skill set is. On the road, that plays. There's times 2009, the Rockies team on the road, we had a great road record. And that lineup,
we're over 500.
And that lineup just trusted each other. If I wasn't going to get a pitch to hit, I'd take a walk. If I wasn't trying to hit a homer, I wasn't trying to hit the ball harder. So all these things that home road splits because of pitching, that's not that. It's just a confidence in you and I. And that's what happens when you're part of good teams. And that's what happens when a free agent comes here. He's not pressing to put these numbers on the road. He's not trying to do more than he's capable of. He knows what he's capable of. And so there's no change. For him, he's always played a certain way. So there's not, when I'm at Coors, I can hit my homers. When I'm on the road, if I want to hit a homer, I got to swing harder. You don't have to do that. And that's where a lot of the guys that come here, they understand that. And so when you're part of a losing team, when your team is losing, these are very competitive people. They are. I mean,
no doubt they're at the highest level of competition.
They don't want to lose for anything. Like if you and I are playing tic-tac-toe, none of the guys that are in this lineup want to lose. So when you're on a losing team, the natural thing that you do is you try harder. That's just what happens. And so when you try harder, what happens? More effort. More effort doesn't mean that you're going to be better.
Things spiral very quickly.
So it's not. If this team was 500 or better, I'd see better numbers as far as home and road splits. I would. And same with, years from now, if the pitching gets better and you go on the road and you're not down 4 runs on the road, you don't see the panic from the offense. You see a team that, hey, we're giving the ball to John Gray, Eddie Butler, De La Rosa tonight. We know that they're going to keep them to 4 runs or less. There's no panic for the offense to go, we need to score 5 runs tonight to even have a chance to win. and we got to do it on the road in San Francisco, where you're going to score 3 runs a game is good.
Right.
So you see what I'm saying? Like
guys lose their confidence because they're trying too hard quickly, and it spirals out. And it's just a never-ending cycle. It's positive feedback.
So as much as we try to solve this Rubik's Cube of home and road splits and off, yes, there are differences in how guys pitch. You go on the road, they will throw more off-speed pitches. But as a hitter, it doesn't change us. It's not like all of a sudden I can't hit an off-speed pitch. It's a minor adjustment. It's an adjustment a major league player can make on the fly. We can make that in between pitches. It's the confidence and it's the trust that the guy behind me isn't trying too hard or I'm not trying too hard, because if the guy makes a changeup and I'm trying to hit a homer, I'm not going to hit it. If I'm trying to hit the ball hard up the middle or opposite field, the changeup has no effect on me. I can flick it to right field.
You trust your guy to drive you in from second base.
And
off of
so there you see, just talking it through and understanding that, look at the last 4 years, the record speaks for itself. You want to understand why the team has been so bad? It's that. There's no trust in each other enough to the point where they can be quality at bat, regardless of what the score is.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point to make about Tulowitzki going to Toronto, because he's going to have Jose Bautista, Josh Donaldson in that lineup, and I think his numbers are going to be huge there, especially Toronto's a hitter's park. But transitioning into this, you said the word plan, and I think that's a huge thing people have talked about this week. Do the Rockies have a plan? And transitioning from Dan O'Dowd and Bill Guyvet to Jeff Bridich, I personally do think there's a plan, and it's starting to come to fruition. My guessing of that plan is they're trying to acquire as many pitching arms as possible from the age of about 24 to 21, and just basically hedging their bet, hoping one of them shows up or pans out, and then getting buy low, sell high guys like Nick Hundley in free agency, because you know you're always going to get hitters here.
You're right, and I think the plan is you're probably pretty close. I mean, we have yet to see, besides early 90s or when Dan signed 2000, when Dan signed Danny Neagle and Mike Hampton, that the Rockies tried to acquire pitching. Now, that was acquiring it through the free agency, and that obviously will never work, because in order to sign somebody here, you're going to have to overpay them. And I hate using mid-level market team, because Jeff Bridich has told me before, we want to be in the top 10 of spending. So I think it's unfair to say mid-level market, they're not willing to spend money. That's
but just running a business smart, you don't want to overpay for one asset when you don't need to be paying that much.
Especially if you see what you have right now, if you're not ready, and I think if you look at the Chicago Cubs, that's a great example. They weren't willing to have Chris Bryant on the team because as an organization, they didn't feel their window was here yet. Granted, they're playing really well, but the window they didn't feel opens until next year. So that's why they wanted to keep Chris Bryant. Do I expect a team like Chicago Cubs this offseason to go out and try to acquire Johnny Cueto? Absolutely. Do I expect them to try to go get after Zach Greinke? Absolutely. If the Rockies were in that position where they were a pitcher away, I would expect them to at least try to go and acquire that type of talent. They're not there yet, and they understand that. And like I said at the very beginning, the thing the Rockies will always have is position players. At some point, regardless of if they're a Gold Glove, an All-Star, a face of the franchise, you're going to have to cut ties with some of these in order to acquire that talent, because like we just said, free agency is probably not the route you want to take unless that's the guy that pushes you over the hump. I'm not bringing on a Johnny Cueto unless I know that my guys are that close, and that I know John Gray needs him and Eddie Butler needs that type of ace, the guy that's going to show you how to carry yourself. And I still think that the Rockies are maybe a year away from going out and getting that big frontline starter.
It's really interesting looking at this rebuild, quote-unquote, because I don't really think it's a rebuild, because the Rockies already have a top 10 farm system by almost everybody's rankings. And right now they're starting to tear down the Major League system a little bit. But judging by their farm system, it doesn't really matter how much they tear down their Major League team, because you know these young guys are going to be ready and coming. This is the most talent the Rockies have had in the organization since Generation R, which you were part of. And, you know, it's really going to be interesting. I'm excited for what's to come. It's going to be a little rough at times, I think, during the next year. But you look at, like you said, they have money to play with. They tried to sign Jose Abreu 2 years ago. And they're going to start throwing that money out, I think, different ways. But like I said, hedging your bets with the pitchers, in the first round, they drafted Brandon Rogers, obviously. They drafted Mike Nicorak at the end of the first round. And then they kind of drafted a few position players here and there, but almost everyone else in their draft was pitching. They tried to just get as many pitchers as possible, and I really like that approach. Do you think that would be a solid plan for a Rockies team to? Because I know right now, for instance, the Cubs are getting proven pitchers and developing hitters. And I think a lot of other teams like the Astros are doing that. Whereas the Rockies are developing pitchers and are going to try and get proven hitters.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think it's a great point because you're right. At some point, you have to develop pitching. And we've yet to see that really with the Rockies. And even years ago with the Gen R that you're talking about, you had Latin American players that made an impact. Ubaldo, Franklin Morales, even Jorge De La Rosa, even though he was acquired from Kansas City, Chacin. We haven't seen an impact Latin American pitcher in a long time.
Antonio Senzatella is probably
he's
that guy.
He's still 3 years away.
Right.
I mean, he's in high A right now. So we haven't seen these type of guys, and if you're going to go and develop pitching, again, it's not, you cannot always look at the list. And I don't like, not that there's anything wrong with being part of like a top 10 list, but those things are skewed. I don't want people to think like, oh, we're in the top 10 list. Do you know how many of these like top 10 lists are written and none of them have ever seen any of the players in this organization? Do you understand that it's a phone call from a front office guy like, hey, how am I not in the top 10? You're right. My friend is the writer. We'll put him in the top 10. It is not, it's political. It's not, you cannot read just into that. You need to see the talent. You need to go out and measure it. Let me measure Archie Bradley versus John Gray. We've seen that. Saw it in spring training. Archie was better. He was better. And at some point, list or no list, you have to put him at the major league level and have him compete against another team. And that's what I'm excited for. I'm excited for the 25th rounder to come up to the big leagues. And yeah, he wasn't on any top 100 list, but guess what?
Look at Scott Oberg.
Look at Trevor Rosenthal for the St. Louis Cardinals. Look at all these different guys. It doesn't matter if you're not in the top 10. It's my point. Put him in the big leagues, see what happens. And so I hate reading all these little publications about stuff that says this guy's good, this guy's not. They're good when they're at the major league level and they're competing and they're proving to get results.
Yeah, and I found that interesting because I've been researching low tools, high production guys, and one of those candidates is Jordan Patterson, who's right now.
Yeah, the outfielder is in Double-A.
Right, but transitioning, you made this great point that foreign dollars, Latin dollars, aren't the same as draft dollars, or draft dollars aren't the same as free agent dollars. They don't all equal $1, so to speak. That shows me that you're really getting this broadcasting thing good, and all these broadcasters have something to look out for, because that's a really smart observation.
Well, you know what? I think at times I'm just trying to simplify everything, and I mean, I'm such a work in progress, but as you know, like, I'm not afraid to take criticism. I'm not afraid to ask a question. I'm not the authority in anything. I'm just trying to get my opinion on stuff that I am learning on the fly. I mean, this front office stuff, I'm reading everything I can. I'm talking to guys like Bridich and John Wild and Zach Wilson going, hey, is my philosophy, how I value prospects, the same as yours? A lot of times they're pretty close. They're not the same, and they'll never divulge everything. But I think the simplest way, and the way that made the most sense, because people are always asking, well, I have this player and we want to get this prospect package back. And I'm like, how are you even getting this prospect package? It makes no sense, because to me, if we want to look at it, I think the free agent Cuban market is the easiest one to do, because that is a monetary value of what we're considering top prospects. And you look at what guys are spending, what organizations are willing to spend. So if they're willing to spend $60 million for the top prospect in Cuba, that is what I'm valuing the value of a top prospect is. $60 million. I'm just going to use that.
And you're using draft slot money for a guy that's probably $4 million there.
And so there's no common denominator with those two. The free agent Cuban market makes the most sense. Here's $60 million for a top prospect. Okay, now I can assign that value to an American first rounder out of Clemson, right? And you say, okay, if this is a top rounder, his value equal to the Cuban player is worth $60 million. So now I have a monetary value of what I'm looking at. So if I'm trying to put this player package together and I'm saying Cargo has $60 million left worth of on his salary, okay, you're going to get one top prospect. That is the value of it to make it all square. It's not as simple as, well, we should get your top pitcher, the top position player, and now a major league ready relief pitcher. It doesn't equate that way. It's not that simple. So I try to make stuff as simple as possible. Like I said, I do talk to the front office and I go, am I close? And they're like, you're pretty close. We don't value it exactly like that, but I think monetary-wise, if you try to look at examples like that, you're not very far off. So if you want to tier prospects and stuff, you can start to
Yeah, it was really
associate
interesting
values.
to look at that with the Troy Tulowitzki trade because there's so many things going on there. Like, for instance, the Rockies don't get Daniel Norris, the Blue Jays' top prospect. Instead, they get Hoffman. But Hoffman was considered probably talent-wise better if he hadn't had Tommy John. And then the other interesting thing there is Hoffman was drafted one pick after Freeland, which kind of leads you to believe maybe Bryce is screaming out loud, draft Hoffman, not Freeland, down at the draft table. Who knows? But
well, and again, I think that's a great observation because to me, Daniel Norris, he had a pretty big drop in velocity this season. He was down to 89 miles an hour. Hoffman, we've seen Tommy John means nothing now. 1 in 4 major league pitchers have had Tommy John.
Chatwood's had it twice.
Right. Well, and we haven't seen him back
Yeah.
yet, but Tommy John is not a death sentence. If it's a shoulder surgery, and that might be what I have no idea what's going to happen with Daniel Norris, but you're hoping due diligence that the Rockies have is that they saw Daniel Norris, and maybe Alex even offered Daniel Norris, and like, no, we want Hoffman, and maybe during that Cubs game they go, okay, here's Hoffman now. Let's talk tulo. And that's probably where it's sped up because I'm assuming that the Rockies had a higher value for Hoffman than they did Daniel Norris. That's my guess. And yes, it becomes a lot more complicated when you take a guy like Tulo. What is his value? What can he get back? How much is left on his contract? Now we're going to add Jose Reyes, who has money to offset. It gets
when you get
really,
money involved and how much I value this guy versus how much you value the same
But
guy.
I'm trying not to give like if I'm a front office guy, I'm not trying to give away how much I value Jeff Hoffman. I want you to assume that I'm lukewarm about the guy, but deep down inside, if you put him on the table, I cannot wait to take this guy from you. So obviously there's a poker game involved, but at the end of the day, it always comes down to, I always feel like teams always try to win the deal. Like, oh, we're the Rockies. We won that deal. You know, like they got Tulo, a great player, but we won that deal. At some point, it doesn't matter. They got somebody that made them better, and you're going to give us pitching that we need to make ourselves better. It's better off if both teams win the deal. If both teams
That's
got
the
better,
point of a trade.
It should be, but I think so much you hear who won the deal, who's the biggest winner, who's the biggest loser, who's the biggest surprise, blah, 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 blah.
I mean, you know this being a media member now, everyone wants a knee-jerk reaction because if you make a declarative statement, let's just say, Spilly says, Helton wasn't the greatest Rocky, all of a sudden everyone on Twitter's talking about it, and that's, that gets you views.
But again, nobody remembers what somebody said. Like if I said Helton wasn't the best player a week ago, and I said this week, Helton's the best player ever, no one's going to call me on what I said 2 weeks ago. And even if they do, it doesn't matter. And that's the problem with media, and I'm learning, is that nobody cares what happened yesterday. It's always, what's the next thing I can possibly say? What's the next tweet I can write that it gets that knee-jerk reaction? And then nobody cares. Unless I'm saying something that is so corrosive and abusive towards somebody that is not politically correct, I can say whatever the heck I want, and no matter what, 2 days later, nobody will call me on it, and that's just how this whole Twitter thing is. It's strange. Nobody holds you to what you say anymore. Like, you could say, this is the worst trade I've ever seen. A week from now, you can write, I love this trade. This is such a good trade. Nobody cares what you wrote 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. And one last question for you, because you can't get through a Spilly interview without asking about the Spilly Slam. Your face lit up, so I just want our listeners to hear that. What is it like to be remembered for a singular moment? Are you happy you're just remembered, or do you kind of want to move away from that?
No, because it meant a lot to me personally. I mean, it wasn't just a moment. It was like a whole, like a I'm sure people have heard the story about how I lost my mom that year. I lost a chance to be a starting outfielder to Carlos Gonzalez. I was having, my wife was having her first child. It was just like a whole like laundry list of emotions, and to me, it represents a growth in my life at that point. And really, that year, once I lost a starting job, you know me, and you've been around me long enough that I care more about the group than I do myself. And so that moment really brought me back to being a Rocky, because for a while I was feeling bad about myself. I was going into arbitration for the first year. My numbers at the time that I got sat, I was leading the National League in doubles, all these things. I didn't deserve to not get the opportunity to play. But Cargo was better, and it took me a while to realize, hey, this guy is better than me. Like, our team's better off if Cargo's playing versus me. Even though I'm doing okay, we're better off moving forward with. And so that moment, running around the bases, helping the team, jump 2 games ahead of the Giants, was much more than just me running the bases. It was a lot. And yes, it's nice to be remembered for something like that. Hopefully I'm remembered for a lot more things, especially doing the broadcast. Hopefully, that's something that people get to hang their hat on, that they were part of an incredible emotional moment. And like I said, it's beyond emotion for me. It's far beyond just the baseball diamond with that moment. But yeah, if you're remembered for one thing, might as well be remembered for hitting a walk-off,
that led your team to the
not,
playoffs,
and
right.
not missing a ball through your legs.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. The excitement factor there. You get Drew Goodman screaming.
Yeah.
I think whenever you're in the booth with Drew, you can razz him like, not as excited as you were when I hit that home run.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I think he's just excited to go home. And 14 innings, you need a lot of coffee to keep you through it.
Right. Anyways, we really appreciate you joining us. This is definitely our biggest land as a guest. We're talking to all the bloggers normally. You can follow him on Twitter at SpillyGoat19. You can follow his work on pre and post game with Root, as well as sometimes in the booth or on KOA. I've heard you, which is a nice treat sometimes when I'm in the car.
Thank you. Yeah, I've been wearing a lot of hats this year, and the transition to the booth will be over the next couple of years, so you'll get to see me do a lot more.
Good. We like you in the utility role
Yeah,
for now,
okay,
but maybe you'll start someday,
Yeah,
right?
maybe I'll be a starting player.
Thanks, Billy.
You got it.
A big thanks to Ryan Spilborghs, SpillGoat19 on Twitter. Spilly, one of my favorites, awesome Rocky, one of the Colorado Rockies fan favorites. As you heard, he hinted that he will be a color guy for the Rockies on Root Sports, maybe even KOA soon. And I think we're all hoping for that because we love Spilly, and the more Spilly we have in our lives, the better. Moving on from there, wrapping up a little bit, but first I want to talk about some prospects, maybe some prospects we haven't talked about enough. I first want to talk about Tom Murphy, who just got called up to AAA pretty recently. In New Britain this year, he slashed .249, .320, .468. He is a catcher and a DH, 24 years old. He could be part of the Rockies' future. Him and Dom Nunez are probably the Rockies' 2 top catching prospects, and we'll talk about Dom in a second. So far in his first 12 games in AAA, he has 50 at-bats, 15 hits, good for a .300 batting average, and he has 3 home runs in those 50 at-bats. So real solid so far. Another catcher who just got moved up, who's been in AA all year. He played in the Australian Baseball League over the winter. That's Will Swarner. He's batting .263, .344, .484. His slash line with 16 home runs, and as well as 6 stolen bases for New Britain. He's 23 years old, so he's a little bit young for the level. We got Forrest Wall, who's down in Asheville, who just made a rehab assignment in Boise, and he went down to Boise, and in 4 games, he had 7 walks and 10 at-bats, and he batted .500. So that's really cool to see Forrest Wall be patient like that, especially going down a level where you can get antsy and try and hit every ball for a home run. Easily becoming one of my favorite Rockies prospects that no one's heard about. Jordan Patterson moved up to AA from Modesto a little while ago. He's played 21 games down there. He has 5 stolen bases in those 21 games, 2 home runs, got a little bit of pop. He's batting .347, .405 on base, .573 slug. Down in Modesto this year is .304, .378, .568 with 10 home runs and 9 stolen bases. So he's a 6'4", really athletic guy.
What position does he play?
Outfield, first base, and DH. Plays all over the place. A lot of guys are starting to become high on Patterson. Not very good tools guy, but definitely a very high skill guy. Kind of reminds me of Charlie Blackmon, honestly. Another guy down there in Asheville is Max White, Colorado Rockies second-round pick in 2012. You know, a little disappointing to see him down still in Asheville, considering he's been in Asheville for 3 years, but I think he's starting to finally figure things out. He's batting .311, .445, .571 in 203 plate appearances this year, as well as 8 home runs and 23 stolen bases. So Max White's looking a lot better this year than he has in the past. Love to see him jump a level soon. Dom Nunez also down in Asheville, 20-year-old catching product, 280, 369, 427. He can also run a little bit, 5 stolen bases, as well as has some really nice pop, 8 home runs, 18 doubles in 81 games down there for Asheville. He's been really solid so far. 6th-round pick in 2013. 2nd-round pick in 2013 would be Ryan McMahon out of California. He in 105 games, modern day, exactly. In 105 games, 307, 385, 514, 13 home runs. He's looking like he could possibly be Nolan Arenado's replacement if the Rockies were ever to move him. Really high on Ryan McMahon. He's rated 95th prospect pre-2015 by Baseball America, top 100 by Baseball Perspective pre-2015, and he's probably going up. And the birthday boy, 1st-round pick, 3rd overall this year, Brendan Rodgers. So far, not amazing statistics down in Grand Junction, but, you know, it's his first pro ball experience, so, and he's very young for the level, almost 3 years younger than the average player at the level. 250, 333, 381 with 2 home runs, 3 stolen bases, 11 walks. So he's been solid. Nothing great, nothing terrible.
But according to him, pretty soon he'll be playing with the big league club anyway.
Right,
so.
he's gonna push that envelope, which I like to hear. That's gonna wrap it up for the week for Trevor McKinney.
I'm Marco Mamelin.
And I'm Jake Shapiro. You can follow us on Twitter at Rocky Singer. You can follow us on SoundCloud. You can follow us on iTunes, Podbean, Stitcher. You can follow us on RockySingers.com, the ESPN Sweet Spot blog network site for the Rockies. You can follow me at Chapelicious. I write for Rocky Singers as well as another thing. And you can follow Marco at
Dr. Heckler and at RockySingers.com as well.
He's got the recaps of this New York series, which will be a fun one considering they have almost everyone who's a really good pitcher in the National League this year pitching against the Rockies.
Plus, we get to see John Gray get his 2nd start. So
which is tomorrow against John Meeson. So yeah, look forward to that, and we'll talk to you next Sunday.
Thanks again, Spilly, for the insight and Root Sports, I guess, for giving us the plug to be able to use this. I guess it wouldn't be a plug, but thanks for letting us interview Spilly. That was awesome.